Alright, I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about switches for a bit. I know, super interesting topic, but it is one that I'm interested in, so I figured I'd talk about it for a little bit. So, what are we talking about here? We are talking about switches that are managed, so once you've kind of stepped out of the consumer grades dumb switches into managed switches, and then you're starting to get into interesting networking as you go up the chain. Now, with that said, I've not played around with any of the truly hardcore switches, none of the Cisco's or any of the other very powerful switches I have not messed with. Don't really see a reason to at this point in time, but yeah, so the brand that I've kind of settled on, which was an interesting kind of path to get there, was the MikroTik. And so the MikroTik switch lineup seems to be right in that really hardcore prosumer line rather than fully enterprise. But, you know, again, tickling that itch that your prosumer really has. So let me go ahead and switch scenes here and pull this up here. So what I've got for you here are the two MikroTik switches that I run, and these are from MikroTik's website, their official images. And these are the 100 gig switch and the 48 port switch. So when I started this, I picked up the 100 gig switch for the ability to connect my render server to my file server at blistering speeds. And so that's what this guy does, is it provides 100 gig networking links out of these 4 ports. And you can see these up in here. So currently I have port 1, port 2, port 3, and port 4 here. And they're all transmitting data. So, and I'll dive into this a little bit more in a minute, but suffice to say, the way I'm running it right now is that there is a 100 gig link that goes in between my HP ProLiant and the Supermicro 256 terabyte file server. These are the two 100 gig links. Then from there, I've got a technical 100 gig link that goes to the main computer, my gaming computer, but it does not actually operate at 100 gigs due to the fact that the PCI bus on the receiving end is not enough to actually cram that much data through it. And then finally, this last port here is configured as a 40 gig link that interlinks in between this switch and the 48 port switch. So what that does is it allows me to transfer almost the entire stack of, if I had every port lit up and was transferring at maximum capacity, I could almost backfeed that into this MikroTik switch at the full rated speed. Now, there's network overhead, there's a whole bunch of other things that go into that, so that would not actually be possible, but the theoretical limit is there. You know, we've got a 40 gig link with 48 ports, so we would be just a touch over. Then you add overhead and other things into there. Realistically, the numbers that I've seen are somewhere in the 30 gig range for true throughput for this switch. Now, one of the really big things that a lot of people were saying about the MikroTik switches as I read reviews, and these are from trusted guys. I serve the home. several others as well, all YouTube-based people going through and hooking microphones up and showing you how loud these switches are. And this 48-port switch was unanimously declared it's got to be in a closet. It cannot be somewhere that you're going to be able to hear it because it is so loud. Now, my first thought was, okay, this thing is stupid loud. Let's throw some Noctua fans in here. I'll just do that right out of the gate. And so I ordered the Noctua fans, and I'll switch this around here. And so you can see there are 3 fans that run this system. Dual power supplies, which is very nice. They're not hot swappable, but they are dual power supplies. So, but I picked up the Noctua fans and was ready to slide them in there, but before I did, I wanted to make sure it booted up. It wasn't a dead on arrival unit. And I booted this thing up, and you could barely hear it. And then once it kind of settled down, you couldn't hear it at all. And I'm not just saying that because my servers are loud. I'm saying that, you know, even with the servers turned off, this thing is a very quiet piece of hardware. I did not have to put the Noctua fans in here. In fact, I've still got them on a shelf because there's no point to them right now. I'm more than happy with the Switch the way it is. So if noise is a concern, make sure you've got the latest firmware on this guy, and I would say don't even worry about it, because this Switch is perfect. Now, when a lot of reviewers you will see talking about a very similar looking model, but a very different model is the PoE version. So the PoE version provides power through all of these ports. And to do that requires a much more robust power infrastructure on the back end. So this as is just a switch, so its thermal needs are fairly low in comparison to a PoE switch. So a PoE switch could easily consume 700 watts of power, and you need to cool 700 watts in a 1U chassis. That one, yes, is going to get loud, and I recommend not putting Noctua fans in there because you're going to need the airflow. But for both of these guys, this one and the 100 gig, now the 100 gig switch, most people didn't say that it was loud, and this guy is surprisingly lightweight for power consumption. And so you can technically run this switch off of the PoE from another switch. It's that lightweight, which is just astounding considering the switching capabilities that are in here. But so those are the 2 switches that I'm running, and I've kind of stepped into the more professional grade equipment. Now, what I find very interesting and what concerned me the most about getting into these types of switches was how hard is the learning curve when you're going into this. I'm not a networking engineer. That's not my forte, never has been. But these are relatively straightforward to set up. The 100 gig switch, a little bit more finicky, but the 48 port switch, dead easy. Pretty much everything that I've got on here is set to automatic, and it works just fine. The only things that I'm changing so far is the MTU sizes, so that these can support jumbo frames for the high throughput ports. And I'm not sure if I want to get into that on this video. I probably won't dive that deep into this right now. Suffice to say, jumbo frames allow me to cram more data through there than just a standard packet will allow. Now, for the 100 gig switch, these get a little bit more in depth. And so what you'll see here is that each of these 100 gig ports is broken up into quadrants. So it has 4 individual devices inside of the port. So this threw me for a loop when I was first looking at it, but the way you can really think about it is that this port, that one of these ports here, is 4 25 gig ports all mushed into one. And so you're kind of seeing that on a hardware level. And if I open one of these up, you can come down through and see that I've set the MTU. And then if we come down to some of this, you'll see here is the networking, the QSFP adapter that I'm using. It does not appropriately show the distance that these are running, but it does show that it is single mode fiber, all that good stuff. And then if we come down here, you'll see that this is, again, just set on an auto authentication mode. So it is picked base CR4. I have not actually selected that myself. So this is one that it is pulling for its, that it is preferring. And then I've left auto negotiate off on these just because I was struggling to get a fiber connection to stay online, but realistically you can leave those set to auto negotiate. Let's see here. Sorry, this menu's been moved around a little bit since the last time I was looking at it. Because there was, oh yeah, there it is, the FEC mode. So you want to make sure that the FEC mode is not selected on automatic. You have to bind it. It doesn't really matter which one you do, but you do need to bind it to either FEC 74 or FEC 91. Again, I don't know the ins and outs on that one, but I do know it makes a difference. And so that goes for those, and I think number 4 here is set for, yeah, because if we come down, yeah, this one here is a DAC cable. So this is that 40 gig connection, and so this is a direct attached copper cable. It shows the exact number that it is. And then if we come down to here, you can see I've left this on auto negotiate with all of those options available. And if we come down a little bit more, you can see that the auto negotiation has completed. It has a rate of 40 gigabits per second. And these are the speeds that it is advertising it is capable of picking up. So, yeah, so that shows that. And then if we come over on this one and we come down to the SFP Plus port, again, remembering to go to the number 1 on that. And if we come down to status, oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Let's go back one. Yeah, I need QSFP, not SFP. And status, you can see that this is 40 gig base CR4, and we are full duplex. Auto negotiation is done, and if we come up here, we should see auto negotiate. I've given it a relatively limited range of devices that it can auto negotiate as. And so, yeah, this is, again, pretty straightforward little setup here, just to bridge in between these two switches. We come back over here. But all that to say, you can set these things up very simply by going into this quick setup menu, and you can pull these in, and they will, with some basic information, be able to come through and run without you having to get into the nitty-gritty. Now, if you're going for a target, like say I was trying to get that 100 gig throughput, which I was, that's when you start having to go through and tweak little settings and change things to get, that full throughput that you're looking for. But like I said, this one over here, almost nothing has been tweaked except for the interlinks in between the devices. So again, and this one I set up later after having learned on the 100 gig switch. So, and I hope all my audio devices have been good because I've been talking for a while. But yeah, so this allows me a very broad range of connections and throughputs that I can do, and realistically is significantly better than any other consumer grade part that I've seen. And so we'll switch back over to scene 2. Okay, so realistically, when you're going out and you're getting a networking switch for your standard everyday user, you're looking for a dumb switch with 8 ports on it. That's what most people need. Then you can start branching out into, well, I've got a bunch of cameras I'm trying to run and they need PoE. So then we start leaning into those PoE switches. Again, they don't have to be super complicated, but they can give you that backbone that you need. Whereas I kind of went the other direction and said, don't really need PoE. I don't really have any devices that are using PoE currently. I don't have any cameras, security systems, those types of things. So what do I need? I need throughput. I need lots and lots of throughput. And so that's where I landed on that MikroTik 100 gig switch. And it is really in a market of its own. As of the making of this video, it is still one of the very few 100 gig switches that is obtainable by the average man. Whereas you start getting into even used hardware or stuff like that are very expensive for 100 gig networking. And if you're in the used market, you are having to put up with very loud switches because those were designed for data centers. And yes, they've got 20 100 gig ports on them, but you're going to pay the price in sound, and there's just no way around it. Whereas this is significantly quieter and provides that springboard to, again, I've only got 4 ports here, but I don't have that many devices that can consume data at that rate. Whereas the 48 port switch allows me a broad range of devices while still providing a significant throughput to the host system. So again, what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to do is to be able to serve up data very quickly to clients that are requesting information either to or from the 256 terabyte file server. And so what that does is it provides a massive pipe for all of that to go through, to where I'm not hitting the bottlenecks of individual, each individual port is going to be its own bottleneck rather than the trunk being the bottleneck. So if I just had a 10 gig link going in between the server and the rest of the switches, I would be severely bottlenecked. I can saturate a 10 gig link with one computer doing backups. And just a minute ago, I was running 2 computers doing backups at 10 gigs apiece, and the server can ingest that. And so I'm pushing 20 gigabits of data down the pipes, and none of this cares. It's got room to spare. So that's kind of the premise of what I'm doing and where I'm going with these switches. And so I really don't see a new switch on the horizon for me. Again, I've toyed with the idea of doing camera systems, but realistically, I'm not set up to run those. It would require pulling new Ethernet cable all throughout the house, and I just am, at this moment, not into that level of task right now. So, again, maybe in the future, but if I did, it would be a relatively small scale project. As far as switch infrastructure goes, probably an 8-port PoE switch, but again, I'm not seeing the need for a 48-port PoE switch anytime in the near future, or the far future for that matter. But yeah, so this has kind of been the talk about the MikroTik switches, the sound profile on the MikroTik switches, the usability of a MikroTik switch. I really want to emphasize that these are not daunting switches. And for those who know, a lot of switches are command line only. That's all you get. For these switches, you've got a user interface. They're much more friendly. Yes, you can load up command line if you want to, do whatever you want to do via command line, but it's not a requirement. And so I think these switches bridge that gap in between, that usability front and the power user front. And so you're able to blend those and kind of get into the scene rather than, again, yes, I could take a master's course on how to program a Cisco switch, and there's plenty of YouTube videos out there on how to do that. But again, this was easy. This was much easier to set up, much cheaper to set up, and again, these guys are hitting a lot of the selling points that I find, and I'm a little surprised that they are almost passed over in favor of a lot of other switches. If you see people running equipment, especially in the category that I am, it's all Ubiquiti. It's either Ubiquiti or use Cisco hardware, or Juniper hardware, etc. And to me, the Ubiquiti, they make interesting products, but they are more expensive than they need to be. So they hit none of these selling points. So either the 100 gig or the QSFP port 48 port switch. They make a 48 port switch. They make a Pro 48 port switch with some 10 gig backhauls, but nothing that has the backhaul capabilities that this one does. I'm not saying that they won't in the future, but for right now, the MikroTik switches are really hitting that niche market, and maybe I'm the target demographic and there's nobody else out there, but for me it seems like, the Ubiquiti brand name has a lot of momentum behind it, but the MikroTik brand name should have just as much momentum because they are putting out some seriously good hardware. So with that, I will sign off and we'll see you in the next video.